So welcome back to our discussion of the Bootstrap, this time the Bootstrap Grid. The Bootstrap Grid is not the easiest entry point to Bootstrap, but understanding the Bootstrap Grid unlocks a lot of Bootstrap behavior. We'll get right to it. So I find myself on the Bootstrap homepage. Bootstrap has excellent documentation, so we always start here. The documentation for Bootstrap, and then this has to do with screen layout, and then underneath it we find the grid system. My example code on the right here uses this documentation, so it's based on it, and you should look at it too. It's really extensive. So I have three examples shown in the web page on the left here of the Bootstrap grid system in action, and we'll break all this down. So in our first example here, 3-column small breakpoint, we see div class container, div class row, and div class column small. So these are calls that call out to Bootstrap styling elements, the container, the row, and the column. Let's take a look at the rules. So up here in my breakdown, containers provide a means to center and horizontally pad your site's content. So a lot of Bootstrap starts with container, including the Bootstrap grid. The next element that's really introduces the idea that this is a grid is the row element. And the row element are wrappers for columns. So columns are contained within Bootstrap rows. In a grid layout, content must be placed within columns, and only columns may be the immediate children of rows. That means once I have a Bootstrap class here, row, within this container, the only content that can be directly underneath that row, or directly a child of that row, is a Bootstrap column. Now within the Bootstrap column, you have flexible content. You can put anything in that. So it's not really restrictive. It's just how they want to lay out this, work this layout. Elements outside the column really don't fit within that. So container, row, column. All columns are fluid and the same width by default. You can see that here. So their size, fluid means their size to the content of the container window. So notice the column shrink as the container window shrinks. There's the behavior on display here now, and we'll get to that immediately. So the next point, there are 12 possible columns, and so 12 is divisible. The reason why it's 12 is divisible by 2, 3, and 4, and 6. So you have to have a limit, and 12 is a good limit. Very flexible because it's like the anti-prime. It's divisible by a lot of numbers. So if you use 3 columns, each column takes up 4 of the possibilities. It happens automatically. Let's take a look at our first example. So we have the container, we have the row, we have the column specified here, and there's 3 of them. So each one of these take essentially 4 slots of the 12 possible columns. The next thing to understand about columns is noted on line 27. This is very important. Columns are specified with breakpoints. So the breakpoint indicates where the layout switches to horizontal columns. So the breakpoints are use horizontal column layout at this size and larger. At smaller screen sizes, the layout stacks vertically. So these simple breakpoints are used throughout Bootstrap, and we specify it with column, dash, and then the breakpoint. So extra small. Extra small is the Bootstrap default. Remember, Bootstrap is mobile first, so the smallest screen size first is extra small. So extra small, we specify that as columns, and we'll see that in an example below. But a column with no dash and a breakpoint, so that means the layout is always in horizontal columns and never stacks. So the breakpoint small means, it sounds subjective, but it's really pretty objective. Screen size is greater than or equal to 540 pixels. Switch, that's the breakpoint specified there. So switch to horizontal layout at that point. And since this is greater than or equal to, then once we specify the breakpoint at small, then we don't specify any other breakpoint. It's this size and larger, go horizontal. So you can understand the rationale for that. Larger screens means more horizontal layout. Smaller screens means more stacking layout and more scrolling. Small screen, stacking layout. Large screen, horizontal layout. The medium breakpoint, MD. The large breakpoint, LG, and XL. And notice these always increase. And once you specify one, you don't specify any other. So once you specify small, that encompasses all the other breakpoints. Let's examine more closely now our first example. Container row, column, SM breakpoint. So right now, this is a horizontal. But as I get smaller screen sizes, there, the screen size has gotten smaller than small at that point. And notice it switches to a horizontal layout there. Pardon me, a vertical layout. It stacks at screen sizes smaller than small. The next example, identical other than the breakpoint, is specifying extra small breakpoint. So columns go horizontal at extra small and never stack. So extra small and smaller, it goes horizontal. So it never stacks, this layout. In the next example, 3 columns extra large breakpoint, the columns go horizontally only at the extra large and otherwise they stack. So as we increase the screen size here, you're going to see this one will go will unstack first, and this one will never stack, and this one will break out of its stacked organization only at very large screen sizes. We'll see. There, we've gone horizontal here, but we're still vertical stacking with the extra large breakpoint. As we get increase in size, eventually we'll get to a size where all the columns really look the same because they've all hit their breakpoints. This is the hard. This one takes the most effort to reach that breakpoint. Chrome Developer Tools has a very important tool to allow you to test responsiveness. It's here, Toggle Device Toolbar. So actually, I was already on. So here you can see this is the way this would look on a Pixel 2 XL. So notice that we have a stacking layout in both the small breakpoint and the large breakpoint. But as we said, the extra small breakpoint will never stack. So a relatively small cell phone, and you have other choices here, including iPad Pro. So I'd use that for like a desktop layout and see that all the layout has gone horizontal at that on an iPad Pro. Let's take another look at. You can edit these layouts. So I'm actually going to take out some of the options and just leave in like what I know to be a small cell phone, and then larger cell phones. I think I'll take out this one, and I'll leave out this. And you can also add custom devices then and specify the exact screen size, but I just want to see a handful of options there. Basically cell phones to, I think there's laptops here. Yeah, laptop. I want to do laptop with touch. So I'll see, that's the same thing essentially as an iPad Pro, but I want to see it there. And now I see I've restricted some of the menu choices here. So I have a more sane list. And so if you have a business reason for a particular device, you can find it or specify it yourself. So let's review the basic components and behavior of the BootstrapGrid system. So containers provide a means to center, so you start with containers. Then rows are wrappers for columns. Columns can only exist as are the exclusive child content for rows, and then all columns are same width by default. Columns are fluid and sized to the parent window. They change sizes. There are 12 possible columns. We'll see that in further examples. 12 is and the reason for that is 12 is evenly divisible by a lot of numbers. If you use 3 columns, then each column takes up 4 of the possibilities. That happens automatically. The columns are specified with breakpoints. Those breakpoints are where specify where the layout goes to horizontal. We specify that as extra small, the default, so that's specified by saying nothing. SM, medium, large, and extra large. So we'll look at further examples next.